Okay, so the UFC have announced their plans for the next 3 months or so. We were kind of left in the dark a little bit with no pay per views planned after the UFC 326 card. But now we finally have some clarity, including the announcement of the White House card, as well as a few other cards that are going to be between now and then. So, without going into too much detail, as I do want to do a podcast on this, let's go and talk about some of the announcements that the UFC have made. Some of the fight nights that are going to be between now and the next pay per view include the likes of Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos, Movsar Evloev versus Lerone Murphy, even though Movsar does look in doubt for that fight now. Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer, that'll be a banger. And Renato Moicano versus Chris Duncan. None of these fight nights I really have an issue with. They're all good fights, some nice sneaky ones on the prelims as well. But a few weeks ago, they announced that Joshua Van will be putting up his first flyweight title defense on the line against Tatsuro Tairo in Miami. That is going to be a good fight. But they never said that that was going to be the main event. So what did they announce as the main event? Well, Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg for the vacant light heavyweight title. Only meaning one thing, that Alex Pereira was going up to heavyweight. This fight, though, absolute banger. There are so many bangers on the prelims that I have not seen many people talking about. Without going into too much detail, as I obviously want to talk about these in depth with the boys on the podcast, let's go and review what the UFC have announced within the last week or two to be on this card. So for that card, some of the fights that were on the prelims include Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown, just two absolute sluggers and journeymen that always put on good fights. That'll be a banger. Cub Swanson's going to be having his retirement fight. He's announced. Mateus Gamrot is fighting Rebovix. Famously, Rebovix had that absolute bloodbath at the Sphere. Who else? Patricio Pitbull versus Aaron Pico. Two Bellators are going to go head to head. Two guys that have had kind of a hard time finding their feet in the UFC. Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa's first ever fight at 205. That'll be a banger. Hopefully he gets ranked and then we start to have some interesting matchups in light heavyweight. And then the main card, Dominic Reyes versus Johnny Walker. I know there's been a lot of commentary online about this fight. It should be good. Two guys that kind of have also been struggling to find their feet in the light heavyweight division. Johnny Walker obviously kind of went on a bit of a tear, then kind of had some unfortunate knockout losses. Dominic Reyes, much the same. And then Curtis Blades versus Josh Hockett. I know Josh Hockett went kind of on a mic tear earlier in the year on the first Paramount Plus card. And then, as I mentioned, Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Tairo and Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg. All bound to be banger fights. That is probably the best card this year so far. Honestly, I cannot complain about any of them. Before we get into what the UFC announced on Friday, another fight night card, which is possibly the best UFC fight night that I have seen in a long time. Carlos Prates taking on Jack Della Maddalena. Two of the best strikers, not only at 170, but in the entire UFC. Jack Della Maddalena coming off a tough title loss to Islam Makhachev. Carlos Prates on the same card, knocking out Leon Edwards. These are my two of my favorite fighters in the UFC. It's like choosing your firstborn or your youngest child. Who do you want to win a fight? Honestly, I kind of want to sit there with my eyes shut and hope none of them get knocked out. But nonetheless, it probably will end by a knockout. These guys are seriously high-level strikers, really good all around, takedown defense, the whole lot, really encompassing a modern-day mixed martial artist. It is sure to be one of the best fights of the year and definitely a fan favorite. And what is the co-main for that fight? Well, they announced it on Friday. It is Beneil Dariush taking on Quillan Salkild. What a chance for the Aussie to finally get his name in the rankings at 155. Quillan Salkild coming off a knockout win against Jamie Malarkey. No, not a knockout win. It was a submission win against Jamie Malarkey at UFC Sydney. I was there in person. It was unbelievable. He also had a few knockout wins last year after bursting onto the scene in February at UFC Sydney, making his debut. What a rise for the Aussie in the last 12 months. I do favor him over the American. Unfortunately, Benil Dariush has had a bit of a rough run since making his comeback into the UFC after a bit of a layoff. I know he did beat Renato Moicano, but he did have that nasty knockout loss to BSD late last year. Now, on to everything else that the UFC announced on Friday. In no particular order, these are some of the fight nights that they announced. Aljamain Sterling versus Yusuf Zalal. What a fight and what an opportunity for the young Yusuf Zalal to cement his name against a former bantamweight champion. Banger. Good fight. Arnold Allen versus Ezekiel Costa. Obviously, Ezekiel Costa took not that much damage only a few weeks ago in the fight against Dan Ige, but Arnold Allen is another level for a test. These guys both pack serious power, really good kickboxing, the both of them. I'm honestly going to take Ezekiel Costa on this one. He's on a bit of a run at the moment, but let's not count Arnold Allen out, even though he did have that loss to Jean Silva earlier in the year. I mean, it's not a guy that you're just going to look over that easily. Who else? Song Yadong versus Davison Figueiredo. Another good fight. I think this could be one of the last fights of Figueiredo's career. He had that loss to Umar Nurmagomedov earlier in the year. Song Yadong, also on the same card, lost to Sean O'Malley controversially. I am going to take Song Yadong, though. I just think he's probably the better, younger, fitter fighter. He's got more to work for in the bantamweight division. And then this one kind of came a bit by surprise. Bilal Muhammad versus Gabriel Bonfim. Honestly, I don't know where to go with this one. I think they've really pushed Bilal down after taking the two losses, losing to Ian Gary as well as losing his title to Jack Della Maddalena. I am not going to make a prediction on that one yet. I think that is too close to call. No joke. I just packed up the setup and then realized I skimmed over probably the most controversial and biggest pay-per-view of the year. The UFC on Friday also announced Khamzat Chimaev's first title defense against none other than Sean Strickland. I can't believe they've booked this. This is one of the craziest fights that you'll see in the UFC. This is going to be probably the best press conference that you're ever going to see in the UFC. It'll be on the same level as Conor and Khabib, if not probably even crazier. But this card, they have not skipped out on the quality of the fights on this card. Sean Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev. I think this is actually going to be a tough matchup for Chimaev. Sean Strickland's style is just always hard to get past. The only fighter that we've really seen successfully dismantle that is, well, Alex Pereira, but also Dricus du Plessis. A lot of guys struggle to get past Strickland's jab, probably one of the best jabs in the UFC. After that, the prelim fight, Alexander Volkov versus Walter Acosta. That is a good fight. For a heavyweight division that is struggling for good talent and good fights, that is a good heavyweight fight, especially as a contender to start challenging for that title. Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley finally returns to the octagon after a bit of a long layoff. Sean Brady coming off that Michael Morales knockout. I am going to take Joaquin Buckley on this one. I think he has something to prove. And they were originally scheduled for a fight night, I know that, but I'm glad they took it off and have put it on a pay-per-view card. They probably deserve to have a pay-per-view spot. The next fight is Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Gaskov. Honestly, not much on this fight. Kind of two gatekeepers of the light heavyweight division. I don't see any of them making a title charge, but nonetheless, 5 versus 9 in the light heavyweight division. Can't really go wrong. Then we've got King Green versus Jeremy Stephens. King Green coming off a fantastic performance just the other week on, I forget what fight night it was, but it was on a fight night card. He won as an outsider. Unk still got it, as they would say, against Jeremy Stephens. Who the fuck is that guy? Is back in the UFC after a bit of a stint in BKFC. Honestly, this is just going to be a fun watch. Honestly, like we know that none of these guys are really going to be trying to get a rank spot back in lightweight, but yeah, it'll be a good fight. And then we've got Atiba Gauthier. This guy is exciting. At 185, he's built like a tank. He had a fight maybe, I'm going to say in January, he had a fight booked. And he fought. He was a massive, massive favorite to win. I think it went to a decision, but he still won. Against Aussie Diaz. Honestly, I'm not that familiar with Aussie Diaz. People might have to let me know in the comments about this guy, but I am nonetheless going to take Atiba Gauthier. We still don't know who is going to be on the prelims for this fight. We just have the main card lineup at the moment. But yeah, I want to get into depth about this card. This card is awesome. One thing I will say is the UFC never skip out on a Chimaev card. They usually stack it. I feel like every card that this guy has been on, they have put good fights on. So the UFC is going to Newark in New Jersey with Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland. And let's go back to the video where we are talking about the White House card. But now, this is the biggest UFC card that everyone's been talking about for the last 12 months. Who's going to be on the White House? Who's going to be headlining? Is it going to be stacked? Is it going to be underwhelming? Dana White came out saying there will be 6 or maybe even 7 fights on this card. All bangers, all heat. But the community have been a bit split on it. So I've also been a bit split on it because they announced the White House card on the Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira card last weekend, and everyone was a bit split on how they felt about it. Everyone was in the room with, people I saw online. It does have that feeling, especially when they were promised to have 4, 5, maybe even 6 title fights on the card. Headlining the card though, Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Honestly, I know people have been saying it, but I'm going to back it up. I feel bad for Justin Gaethje, man. As an American on the White House card, he's like a lamb being sent in for slaughter. I just think Ilya's too good, too quick, too much to work for. This guy has the best 3-fight run in UFC history, knocking out all legends. And I just see him adding Justin Gaethje to that list. But then, this is the fight I'm really excited for. Alex Poatan Pereira taking on Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight championship. Alex Pereira, possibly going to have gold in 3 divisions in the UFC. Like, there has never been anyone that has been close to achieving that, and he might be the first. I hope he wins, but this is going to be an absolute insane fight. 2 calculated strikers, 2 great kickboxers. Obviously, got to feel sorry for Tom Aspinall after what happened in the fight with Cyril Gane. But what an opening of a door for Alex Pereira. This guy has a chance to make history at probably the most historic UFC card there will ever be. O'Malley versus Zahabi. This is a one that came from left field. Apparently, Sean O'Malley, all he wanted to do, he didn't mind who he versed. He just wanted to be on the White House card, and he had his wish granted with Ayman Zahabi. I do see him putting away Zahabi, and honestly, for the sake of the Americans, I hope O'Malley wins as well. Now, this is an interesting one. This is one I don't think anyone expected, and that is Mauricio Rufy versus Michael Chandler. Now, for months, people have been saying how much Rufy's style looks like Conor McGregor's. I think that McGregor was booked for this fight and something fell through last minute. Either one of the matchmakers wasn't trusting him or something else fell through. Maybe Chandler couldn't make 170 and McGregor could, and they couldn't rut out pay or weight or a multitude of factors. But I am saying that this is going to be a good fight. I think Rufy comfortably puts away Michael Chandler. Next, this is the one that had a lot of people startled, and that is Bo Nickel versus Kyle Daukaus. This is unbelievable. This is Dana White privilege at its finest. Bo Nickel on the main card for UFC 300, now on the White House card. Him and Kyle Daukaus, both unranked. Can't believe it. I honestly can't believe it. Ahead of a guy like Diego Lopez, who we'll get onto, who recently came off a title shot against Alex Volkanovski. He's ahead of him. Unbelievable, man. Like, that is a fight that I think the fans will laugh at for how hyped up this card was and obviously how grandiose this card's going to be. To have 2 unranked fighters like that is ridiculous. Then the final fight is Diego Lopez versus Steve Garcia. From what I understand, Steve Garcia is good friends with some of the people close to Trump and the Republican Party. There's been a lot of photos circling online of him with Charlie Kirk whilst he was still alive. So maybe that is something that plays into it as to why he was on the card. And Diego Lopez, obviously, he's a Mexican, well, Brazilian residing in Mexico. He's lived there since he was 18. And the UFC love Diego Lopez. They've put him on a platform and given him some probably fights that he probably didn't deserve. That second Volkanovski fight, he probably didn't deserve the shot after, beating Sean Silva. But yeah, that'll be a good fight nonetheless. But besides that, that's kind of everything the UFC have announced in the last couple of days or so. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Let me know what you think of some of these fights. Let me know what you think of my opinions. Let me know what kind of content you want me to cover on these fights in the future. And I'll see you in the next video.